The Delta Species cards are some of my favorite ever, so I was wondering what if Sinnoh Pokemon had Delta Species cards. Unfortunately, Delta Species didn't make it past Gen 3, so even though Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3 starters have Delta Species, Gen 4 is completely lacking. So I decided to make Delta Species cards for all 3 Gen Final Evolve starters. And I decided to go with Infernape first. I thought it would be cool to have a dark type Infernape, so I got this Nidoking card from the internet, and I'm just erasing all of the Nidoking's image so I can replace it with Infernape. I'm currently doing it with the eraser tool, and although it's a bit tedious, it's gonna look great at the end. After finishing up, it looks completely gone, apart from a bit of smudges. After clearing the smudges, we're able to put in our Infernape artwork. I got this artwork from the internet, and I think it looks really nice. I'm not too sure if it's fan art or artwork directly from the TCG, but I really liked it, and I think the art style plus the black dark type border looks really nice together. After fitting the main art piece into place, it's time to work on the attack. Having an attack called Dark Horn wouldn't make much sense for Infernape, so I decided to change it to Dark Pulse, and I decided to give it Nasty Plot at the top of the card. You guys can also see I also added Monferno to the little stage 2 image, but I didn't change Nidorino to Monferno because it's just so small. I'll add the detail afterwards, but before I do that, let's move on to the next starter. I found this really cool Pidgeot image, and it's an electric steel type Delta Species card, and I thought this would be really fitting for Torterra to have because it's just so opposite from its traditional ground grass typing. After making the image big enough, I decided to import the Torterra image I have, and we got this Torterra. I thought the drawing and illustration looked really cool, and it would be an amazing addition to the Delta Species set I'm making. After fitting it into place, I begin to erase Pidgeot. This time I'm not going to just use the eraser tool. I decided to use the wand selector, but it was erasing too much outside the illustration. So I decided to go with the select cut method. I decided to speed up this process for you guys because it is kind of satisfying to look at in high speed. And this also is a bit tedious, but it's definitely better than just erasing everything. And I decided to just use the eraser tool when I came close to Pidgeotto's little portrait area here. I want to keep that little Delta Species symbol because I feel like if I don't keep the little swoosh, then I'm just not being very loyal to the OG Delta Species cards. After I finished erasing everything, it looks nice and clean. We can bring in our Torterra illustration. It is bleeding outside the borders of the card a bit, so I decided to make the illustration just a bit smaller so it's not bleeding outside of the image, and then push it to the back so the entire empty portrait area is filled. I think it looks really nice, and now it's time to add the little detail. Last time I didn't show you guys this part, but all I really do is erase the entire portrait and then paste in Grotto's little Pokedex portrait, because if you guys know, the evolution portrait's always like the Pokedex entry portrait. I kind of do struggle to make Grotto's portrait small enough to fit in the little window while also filling the entire window up so there's not any little emptiness around it. After fitting the portrait into place, it's now time to fill up the emptiness. While I'm doing it, the application kind of glitches and completely closes on me, but luckily it saved all our artwork. Our Torterra Delta Species card is still saved, and so is our Infernape one, and it still looks pretty nice. I added the attack static shock in place of rotating claws, and as always, I'll add the detail later on. For our next card, we decided to go with Omnistar. This is because Delta Species still retain their original weakness, so I won't have to change that about my Empoleon, and Empoleon just looks like a wise guy to me, so why not make him psychic? After fitting our card into place, now it's time to paste in our Empoleon art, and there was such cool wallpaper on Google, but I decided to go with this one of him sliding on ice. At least I think it's ice. Anyways, it's time for us to clean out the main portrait area. I take a huge chunk out of Lord Helix's head, and now it's time to work out on the details. I quickly cleaned the remaining parts of the portrait area, and as I zoom out, you guys can really see how clean it is. And now it's time to put in our Empoleon artwork. And I'm super excited to put it in, but unfortunately, as I make Empoleon's artwork to fill in the portrait area, there is a big issue. Empoleon's face is getting covered up by the Delta Dex logo. And obviously, because the Pokemon is the most important part of the portrait, as cool as this Empoleon image is, I just have to go with another one. Alright, so I found a second Empoleon image off the internet, and it's arguably cooler than the one I got before, and it reminds me of the Sharpedo's EX card. But anyways, as I'm putting this card into place, it honestly just looks like such a cool card and such a cool artwork. I'm also keeping the move Bind, and as I'm reading the second move, I realize this was meant to be a poisonous card and not a psychic card, but it's totally fine, as a poisonous penguin is a pretty cool idea. I decided a different approach for this smaller evolution portrait, and I'm simply smoothing over the smaller Pokemon here, and it does take a little while to do, but afterwards we can just simply paste in our Prump image, remove its background, and put it over the small gray portrait area. And I feel like it looks like the cleanest one so far. But let me know what you guys think. As for the attack, Vengeful Spikes sounds like a super cool move, but I don't know if I'm going to keep going with this. I also have to add a bit of uniqueness to this card. But first, let me remove the gold Pokemon name here. I didn't show you guys how I did it before, but I try to source the little circles and then paste them over and smooth it over to make it look as normal as possible. It again is a tedious process, but I think it looks really nice. For now, I'm just gonna paint in black ink over the text here for HP, and I'll fix that later on as well. I finally just take a text box and put in the Pokemon's name here, and I just realized I could bold the text to make it look more like the original text from the card. As for the attack, I'm gonna rename the attack Polar Virus. It kind of plays into the theme of it being a poison delta species while also Empoleon being a penguin. And the inspiration of the attack is all those ancient viruses that are frozen in ice that sometimes get reactivated. Alright, these are like rough finishes of all the cards. I am gonna finish them all up later on, but I honestly think they all look really nice. And my favorite one so far is the Empoleon one. Alright, so the first Pokemon is Delta Species Torterra. It has 100 HP and the move Static Shock. I decided to keep the Pokebody's name the same. The Pokebody allows you to draw a card each turn Torterra is in play, and you get to flip a coin, and if it's heads, your opponent is now paralyzed. Now, I don't play the TCG, so I don't know if it's like a good card or a bad card. This is obviously just for fan art. Alright, the next card is Delta Species Infernape, which is a dark type. I decided to give it Nasty Plot as inspired from the games, and a special move called Shadow Combat, which ignores resistances. This card is actually pretty cool, and honestly I like the comic book style artwork here. Alright, the final card is Delta Species Empoleon, which is a psychic / ghost / poison type. I don't even know what this typing really is in the TCG. Anyways, I personally like the 3D artwork in this card the best. I feel like all three cards have something to offer. His first move is the Bind, which is the same from original Amistar, but the move I gave him is Polar Virus, which does 30 damage plus it poisons all the water type Pokemon on your opponent's bench, which I don't know is super broken or not, but yeah. I feel like all three cards are different in art style. Torterra's is based in realism, Infernape's is kind of comic booky, and Empoleon's is that computerized 3D. I tried to make all the cards different attacks and effects. Tried to make them super balanced as well. Let me know how much you guys like them and if I should be making more. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.